Hello, so I thought I'd do a very quick review of a GBHL 90 tournament I went to recently in St Albans called Denizens in the Dark. It was a one-day event with 4 games of an hour and a half each, which obviously is a bit on the shorter side, so it means that uh, we have to be relatively quick. I didn't actually realise this when I picked my army, which is a bit of a grindy army, so something a bit more killy might have been a bit better to make sure, it did end up going to time or whatever. Um, but when choosing my army, I was trying to figure out whether to do something sort of fun or interesting, or whether to take something competitive. In the first half of last year, I sort of took fun lists that I enjoyed and just ended up getting slapped repeatedly. So I've decided that there's no honour in being a martyr and not taking something that's fairly good. So accordingly, I took the Host of the Dragon Emperor. Boo, boo hiss, boo. uh, so obviously, you have to take the Dragon Emperor himself. I think the choice then is whether you take Rutabi, or whether you take a Black Dragon Knight and Captain, or whether you try and fit Brogear in somehow. Um, I went with just taking Rutabi as well, so I only had 2 warbands which were maxed out though. So the warbands were the Dragon Emperor of Rune leading 15 Black Dragon warriors with pike and shield, and then 2 Black Dragon cataphracts, and then 1 cataphract with a drum. Rutabi was leading 8 normally stealing warriors with shield, 2 with pike and shield, 3 with bow, and then 2 Dragon Cult acolytes. How the list works is pretty obvious in that you have a pike block that can get to fight 5. Both warbands can fight independently if needed, although they're better basically deathballing. And it's pretty good model count, but being 3 ranks deep can mean that your front line is a bit low, so the Dragon Emperor's massive base can be handy there. But there's not too much to say. It's pretty obvious. You just form a massive pike block and push it forwards and sort of see what happens. And then you've got a few honesty bows. The acolytes just add a bit of spice, really. That's partly just because of the points I had left over as well. Because I like acolytes, but I don't rate them a huge amount. I think with this one I prefer just to max out on pike and shield. Just try and get 5/5 pike block. I think that's where its beauty lies, really. But yeah, and obviously the drum is basically because I don't have march, so I basically get free march every turn. Obviously it's a bit sad that you can't stack that with a march from a captain or something and move 12 inches a turn with infantry, which is just hilarious. But yeah, that's pretty much what it's for. The drum's there to get you into combat, and then you just grind out the enemy with the Legendary Legion bonus. It's not even Legendary Legion bonus, it's the Palanquin bonus. That's how good it is. Legendary Legion bonus just helps with the list building. In that I must have saved 30-35 points or something just by getting the Black Dragon upgrade for free in his warband. Obviously not getting that upgrade in Rutabi's warband is a bit of a bummer, but equally, if you position the warriors carefully and you're able to get your guys together, then there's no reason why they can't be supported by fight 5 troops just to get fight 5 into the combat. Anyway, I think it's fairly obvious what the army does. Part of what I was trying to do as well is if you have only the Dragon Emperor and Rutabi, then it means that your leader's pretty safe because the Dragon Emperor is a beast. And then for missions like Assassination and Fog of War, where you have to target a secondary hero, they have to target Rutabi, or Rutabi has to be my assassin, and that's a pretty good position to be in because frankly I think she's more than capable of being a Easterling sort of army leader on her own. She's very good. The thing that I was trying to figure out with this one is I ran this Legendary Legion 800 points at Bert's event last year in Newbury, and I found that I had enough guys to basically have a shield wall with the Emperor behind. So I think the Emperor actually wants to be a support piece for the majority of the game, and then sort of slide in where he sees an opportunity. But if he doesn't actually get into combat until the second half of the game, I think that's fine. But with 600, I had a feeling that I'd be throwing him in just to make sure that my shield wall was sort of wide enough to not be outflanked, and also because he's quite a large part of the list points wise, so I can't not use him. But yeah, so on to the games. So game one, I was against Cameron Barradell, who was taking Defenders of Helm's Deep. So his list was Theoden with Halath, and then 3 Rohan Royal Guard with Spear, 6 Warriors of Rohan with Spear, and then 3 Warriors with Shield. And then Gimli leading 6 Warriors with Throwing Spear, and 5 with just Shield. And then Legolas leading 3 Rohan Warriors with Bow, and then 2 Elves with Bow. So that was a total of 29 points with a little bit of shooting, and then obviously Halath giving the +1 fight bonus to his buddies when he's in combat, and Gimli basically being the tank. So we used the veto system at this tournament. I obviously can't remember what we vetoed, but we ended up with recon. And I was quietly sort of bricking it because I don't think I've ever won a game of recon. I just really suck at it, like really badly. So on paper, great, because that's like looking at the matchups, I should win that. But because of my ineptitude at recon, I was a bit like, oh god. I think basically Cameron got most of his guys on turn 1. I think it was just Leggy's warband which didn't come on turn 1, which is fine because they were going to be at the back shooting anyway. On my side, Ratavi came on first turn, Dragon Emperor came on second turn, which is a bit annoying because it meant there was a turn delay in getting the drum going. It meant, so, my guys, my main force was slightly behind my front force, which basically meant I lost that time that I would have had basically getting on the board and then just drum, and then the fight taking place, 2/3 up the board, and then he has to, walk even further to actually get off my board edge, and I can just slip the guys past and do that. So that was a bit of a bummer, but it wasn't really fatal. I initially kept my 3 archers back to interfere with, if he tried to sneak a few guys past, I'd chuck an archer in or shoot him or whatever. But my plan was basically to march the pike block up, basically grind him out because we might end up both fight 5 a little bit, but he didn't have as many Royal Guard as I feared, so I'd probably have to fight most of the time, and then even if I didn't, it would be his 2 with banner against my 3 with banner, and he'd be killing me on 6s, I'd be killing him on 5s, so I kind of backed myself to grind his army out. But I was conscious about the time, which was a factor. But all I did is I drummed up to the middle, set up my dudes. I did cop a couple of turns of throwing spears whilst I set things up, which was a bit annoying. I think I lost a few guys, but nothing to write home about really. I protected all my juicy stuff, so I think I lost a few swords or whatever. Fine. And I had my cataphracts all hidden behind a building, and eventually 2 archers joined them, and they were just going to drum past, try and run the gauntlet of bows, and get off his board edge. My cav would only have to be shot at for 1 turn though, but the archers might be 3 turns, and so that was a bit of a risk. But if I got the 3 models off, I'm tripling, so that's 7 VPs just right there, with, regardless of anything else that happens. The battle was joined, and essentially it was just shield wall on shield wall, is the short version. He kept putting Theoden and Halath into the Emperor. A couple of times I was able to pair stuff off, so it was just Theoden and what have you. But Ratabi went into Gimli. In terms of the infantry fight, basically my guys just totally ground his out and did the business, and then eventually wrapped around on both sides and just basically murdered everyone. I started trickling guys past past his line. What he had done though is he had 6 or 7 guys on the flank of his initial shield wall that I assumed would be protecting his right flank, but actually they just cheesed it and basically tried to run around and get off my table edge, which I did not anticipate because I did not really have anything set up to deal with them, because of how it was. When he sort of moved them away, they're actually fairly far from my guys, so I don't really know what to do about it because I had one archer to intercept, and to be fair to him, I think he shot one guy, so that was pretty cool. Um, but I ended up just thinking, well, actually, I'm just going to leave him and run more guys off his side, which is, which yeah, seemed like a good idea. But the problem is, if I was able to get 7 off and he got 6 off, that's not doing much on the VP front. But it was basically a deployment error. Whereas what I might have done was, I don't think I even had to set up a whole warband to intercept, but at least just stuff to tie them up. I think just because I think what I did was they sort of bailed, and then rather than give chase or sort of cut back behind the house on my left to intercept, I sort of thought, well, okay, I'm just going to trap what he's left behind and then run past him. And I think that's just pretty risky in terms of how much time you have to run stuff off. So that's what's going on in the background. But hero wise, I struck up with the Emperor and Rutavi a couple of times, and I think Cameron didn't strike up in response either time. I think he was probably he was just more focused on calling heroic moves, which I think in retrospect, obviously striking was probably the better option, because basically Rutavi struck up twice and killed Gimli without Gimli having killed anything. And this whole time Legolas was just absolutely failing to kill anything, which was a bit ridiculous because obviously he's meant to be a pretty awesome archer, but he hadn't powered up Gimli at all. But then Gimli died, which obviously doesn't power up Legolas because he died without doing anything. And then basically I killed all the warriors around Theoden, and then I was able to pair off Haleth, trap him and kill him, which then obviously weakens Theoden. And then basically the Emperor killed Theoden over a couple of turns, I think. But basically, once my 3 guys had run off, I think it took a couple of turns, but then we got ran to time basically. So Cameron had 6 or 7 guys. I think it was 6 by this point. Cause I think I shot one that were probably a couple of turns away from getting off the board edge, and to be fair to Cameron, he killed my 2 archers that were running behind my horses. So, I think my guys were 2 to 3 turns from getting a bunch of them off. But obviously they had to run the gauntlet of Legolas and the archers. So I think it's one of those ones where I ended up winning 12-0 because I hadn't really lost any guys, but obviously kind of decimated his middle. So I broke him. I killed Theoden. And I got 3 models off, so it was a 12-0. But I think if we'd have carried on playing, he would have got his 6 guys off. And I think, again, if we'd have played till natural conclusion, I'd have got more guys off, I think. I think the likelihood I would have got enough guys off to get more, but not double or anything. So it would have been, more like 8-0 or something like that. But I think the short time frame hurt a little bit there. But I was quite pleased with 12-0 because I felt like I was in control of the game, but those guys running off the side really vexed me. So I was quite pleased when we ran to time, which I know is a bit of a gamey thing to say, but there you go. So I think I won my first ever game of Recon. I don't know if it was my first ever game, but certainly a tournament. I don't think I've ever won Recon. I really suck at it. But so that was game 1. It was a good game. On to the next one. So game 2, I found myself on top table, which was weird, facing Mr. Rob Mackey. So straight away I knew it was going to be a tough game. His list was I think it was probably pot calling the kettle black, but fairly meta list, I think, with the Witch King with 3 might, 13 will, 3 fate, Crown of Morgul on a horse with 6 black nums, and then 6 Barannans with spear and shield, and then 5 trackers. And then Math Sauron on horse, and then 4 black nums, and then 4 Morannons, 4 trackers, and then Sully Bear with on armoured horse with 2 Serpent Riders, for a total of 34 models. Again, I'm only recording this the day after, but I cannot for the life of me recall what we vetoed. But we ended up playing Capture and Control, which is the one where you have like the 5 objectives sort of equally spaced with 3 across the middle, and then sort of 1 12 inches in on either side. And it's the one where you flip the tokens to each player's control, rather than having to end the game stood next to them or whatever. So the board didn't really sort of confer any particular advantage to either player, but there was a rock pile in the middle, which I didn't actually realise was going to be fairly important, just because I ended up deploying Rutabi's warband first, basically spreading to cover one side of the rock. My deployment was a bit weird, to be honest. So I basically sort of set up a bunch of guys in the front rank, and then more guys on the left to basically wrap around depending on where Rob ended up deploying. But we ended up actually facing off against each other in a fairly sort of standard way. He put his Witch King and that warband opposite Rutabi's warband. I put the Dragon Emperor on the other side of the rocks with a bit of the sort of pike wall on his side, but then a lot of pikes behind the rocks, so they could sort of pivot to either side depending on what he ended up doing. But as it was pretty symmetrical, to be honest. The only thing is I put the Dragon Emperor out to one side too much, so the fight bubble was only affecting basically up to where Rutabi was on the other side, not anywhere beyond that, which is obviously a bit dumb, because that would have been pretty helpful for his fight for Black Numenorians, but there we go. I think the overall strategy was potentially right, but even just swapping the Emperor around a bit just to get him more central, I think would have been better. Yeah, I can't remember all the specifics, but I think Rob charged in his Witch King flank to 1. I moved my pikes from behind the rock to basically bolster that shield wall. He fell back his left to cover the gap between a rock and a hobbit hole, so basically conceding one of the side objectives, which I scooped up, but kind of contesting the middle. He was a little bit back from the middle though, so I was hoping to basically just push him off. So yeah, that was pretty much the sort of areas of fighting for the whole battle, really. So he had some trackers up on a hobbit hole, which were sort of taking pot shots, but they didn't really influence the game that much. They sort of killed a few guys and whatever. They didn't really bother my archers at the back. I don't think I even really bothered shooting my 2 guys I left at the back to cover that final objective. But yeah, I think so talking about this after the game, I think Rob charging turn 1 actually helped me quite a lot, because I didn't have to take courage tests to charge everyone where Rutabi was, and I think I just had an absolutely killer turn 1 where I just killed so many models. I just thought, this game's going to be over quickly. It did slow down, but it was basically just a grind fest, and there was some interest about sort of the positioning of models and stuff, but overall it was pretty much shield wall on shield wall in Rutabi's area, and then the Dragon Emperor, he kind of disintegrated his guys sort of disintegrated Rob shield wall a bit there, but I mean he was still holding that sort of broad line for most of the game. And meanwhile on the right, he chucked his Serpent Riders towards my side objective, and I had my 3 cataphracts there. I killed his Serpent Riders, and then they sort of looped around to charge the trackers covering his back objective at the end of the game. Meanwhile, I was just copying spell after spell after spell, obviously. Getting the transfixes off. I don't think Rob tried to do too much else. I think it was just mostly the transfixes. But eventually, Rutabi ran out of will, and the Dragon Emperor I think got immobilised to 1. Again, this game is always going to be about will conservation. So, turn 1, he immobilised the Emperor. I think he got a 6. I was like, well, I was going to chuck my resistant to magic at it. Failed. And I was like, well, great. But, he just sort of slides back into being support, so it wasn't too bad for me. But, Rutabi was in trouble because I think Rob looked at Suladan and looked at Rutabi and her being immobilised and was just like, sod it, chucked Suladan in. And it's happened 2 turns in a row. I obviously lost. Suladan came and struck up. I got the charge bonus, but failed to kill Rutabi. I think that defense 7 came in absolute clutch because everyone was on 6s to kill her. And she didn't get the results. So I was quite lucky to have her alive. But I remember actually that there was one time where we both struck up. I think it might have been the first turn actually before he immobilised her. So I'm getting the sequencing a bit wrong here. But I think it was one turn where we both struck up, and I was a bit unfortunate to lose that strike off, but fortunate not to have her killed. So it kind of I could sort of live with that. Because I think by rights, I think he had 2 bites of the cherry, and really she should have been dead, but I'll take that. The dice balanced out because I had one archer who was next to the Witch King, and this guy was just an absolute chad because we basically finished movement and Rob was about to shoot, and I was just like, oh, hang on, I've got a bow, and then I sort of looked at him and I was like, oh, sod it, yeah, I'll take a shot here. Shot into the Witch King's combat, and obviously shot him off his horse with just like one round of archer shot. So I think it was a 4-up, 4-up, 3 or under, and then 5-up. So it was pretty lucky. But that helped so much because obviously it limited his mobility and his killing power massively. So that was actually quite important. But again, that was sort of tempered with my unluckiness with the Dragon Emperor because I'd failed 3 courage tests with him to charge terrifying models. And I failed quite a lot of courage across the board because of the Harbinger of Evil rule as well, which meant Rob was able to sort of dictate fights a bit even when he lost numbers. If I failed to charge a few guys, he could ignore them for the turn. So, basically what happened from that point on was Rob trying to protect the objective on his right and in the rear, and then sort of having one Black Numenorian on the middle one. And he also sort of put Sully across to the middle, I think in the last turn to try and get my guys off of it. And basically the Witch King got tar pitted and didn't really influence the game at all. And from my end, the state of play was that I lost the final priority of the game, which was sad. But I charged, I killed a bunch of trackers, which is good, and killed the Mouth of Sauron, who had tried to come in and help the trackers out. And I sort of covered my right and the back objective, contesting the middle, which by rights I should have really had, but I couldn't kill this bloody Black Numenorian, which was a bummer. And then on my left, I didn't really have a hope because the Witch King was defending it with a few boys, and I just wasn't getting to it. So he tagged basically all my guys. So all I had was a couple of guys who failed terror checks, but then the Dragon Emperor, and I was a bit like, well, there's got to be a solution here where I use the Dragon Emperor and basically win the game through careful use of him, because he was left completely untagged just because Rob didn't have the models to tag him as well. So I was quite pleased with my plan because I basically dismounted everything, ran the Dragon Emperor to the back objective to take on the tracker on that objective. Meanwhile, my cataphracts were sort of charging everyone, so uh, they should be polishing off the other one. So I was comfortable with. I think I chucked one of the palanquin holders there as well, just to make sure we got the kill. So I was pretty comfortable that I was winning that back one, so that one could suddenly swing to me. And then everyone else tried to charge the Black Numenorian on the middle one. So that was the plan. And obviously none of the other combats mattered, but the back one, or Rob's back one, basically I won both combats, killed both trackers. That one switched to me, so I had 3 out of 5. So I think by that time I had won. So it was just whether I could flip the middle one to my control to make it a 9-3 rather than 7-3. So that was interesting. So the middle one, Sullivan killed both the people he was up against, which were basically my 2 guys in base contact with the objective. But then I killed the Black Numenorian, so basically we basically went to neutral. So yeah, it ended up 7-3, I believe. That was a very close game indeed. It was a very good game actually. I was quite pleased with my will management, because I sort of went in and knew immediately the will management was going to be, probably the most important thing I could do. And I think I didn't really resist the transfixes when I didn't have to, and then tried to resist the clutch ones. So I was quite pleased with how I played the will situation. The trouble is with two casters, it meant that sometimes I'd spend the resources to block one with Rutabi against the Witch King, but then it was kind of a case of like, well, do I not resist it and then she's gonna die because she can't strike up or anything, or do I resist it but then have no will to resist the Mouth of Sauron's, but then he could fail to cast? So it was kind of weighing those things up, which was actually quite fun to try and sort of navigate. But yeah, no, that was good, and obviously Rob's a very good player, so I was pleased with that result. So I went into lunch in first place, which was weird. So game 3, I was on top table against Mr. Martin Seed, who had brought his Assault on Lothlorien, which is quite terrifying, because I think Martin's a good player and it's a good list. So yeah, it's gonna be a tough one, definitely. So in terms of scenarios, I think I vetoed Clash by Moonlight just because the deployment was too far from each other. It would give him plenty of time to shoot me. In retrospect, I didn't realise a lot of his shooting was trackers, which are affected by the Clash by Moonlight rule, I believe. So that could have maybe been an option. I can't remember what he vetoed. I think it was Breakthrough or something like that, where he'd have to deploy and defend the middle and wouldn't be able to shoot me, which made sense. And we ended up playing Lords of Battle, which I was kind of more comfortable with than Clash by Moonlight, just because I could deploy in the middle of the table, which put me, maybe 3 turns of shooting away, so I could sort of deal with that. I thought. So basically, Martin did what he needed to do, which is deploy at the back and get 3 turns of shooting off. And to be fair, he wasn't he wasn't like guiding me or anything. He just basically deployed so get a bit of shooting, which obviously he needs to do to play his army to full effect, but wasn't sort of torturing me with like too much shooting there. I think I was in the wrong mindset for a lot of this game, because I sort of felt on the back foot immediately, because I think I lost quite a lot of guys to shooting, and then as part of me sort of moving towards him, he had his captain of Wild Riders on the side, just sort of as a throwaway to just charge some of my guys. But actually the captain basically come in and just chopped a whole bunch of my dudes up, which I really didn't expect, because I was just like, well, I got the 5/5 and the banners and the supports. I was like, well, you can if you want, but I'll try and slap him. But it was me who was slapped, so it was folly of me to think little of that captain, because he was probably MVP at the end. But yeah, I think I lost a bunch of guys to shooting, and I lost a bunch of guys to that captain, and I think Martin was quite free with him because it was a bit like, what else is he going to do? Let's just sort of chuck him in and see what happens. And it went pretty well, and I think he combated a couple of times and munched a bunch of guys, and it took my Dragon Emperor going around and slapping him to actually kill him. So yeah, that was nasty. I think before I even sort of got into combat, I'd lost like 11 guys. And this is what I mean, is I got into that mindset of like, I think I've lost this. Let's just sort of enjoy the game and do what I can. Because I think the kills were like 13-3 or something after the first round of combat, or just before combat. So I did kill one of the Wild Riders. But what I didn't really think about was actually, like, as we got fighting, obviously that's where my guys are going to excel. And actually there was a point where I was on 20 kills and he had like 21. And if I'd have kept my head a bit more, I think I'd have looked at that and said, well, actually, I've got to play it right, and actually I can win this. I'm still definitely in it. But I don't know why, I just couldn't shake that mindset of like, things are going badly because I've lost all these guys, and I think if I'd have kept my cool a bit, I might have done a bit better. I think it would still be tough because he's got the enraged spiders and the bat swarm and whatnot, which you'll hear about shortly. But yeah, I think it's one of those where sometimes I was just like, I'm gonna fight out combats where I'm hopelessly outnumbered, because I'm like, well, I'm higher fight, I have a banner, I need to kill stuff. But actually, if I'd have shielded and a couple preserved my numbers a little bit better, basically done all the optimal moves with each guy, then I might have actually brought that in a bit more and kept myself in the game for a bit longer. But I don't really know what happened. I just sort of I think I don't know, let it. To be fair, Martha wasn't doing anything to like get in my head, but somehow he got in my head without doing anything. But yeah, no, it was a really really nice game, and then it was really close, but it basically just tipped, and I think I killed some more. I think I ended up on like 30, but he ended up with 40 because he basically just just eventually reduced my numbers enough, got all the traps, and was just killing stuff. And then, to be fair to him, he was doing all the enraged spiders on the side and getting all those off where he needed to, and then mitigating Brutabi with I think you just sort of mixture of bogged him down, and I think he withered her as well, which didn't actually impact the game that much really, because he's mostly D5 or under, so it was all right. But I think it might have been possibly a transfix or something. I can't remember, something like that. But yeah, basically at the clutch moment, it was bat swarm and enraged spider into the Emperor, and I didn't have enough guys to cover him, so that was the Dragon Emperor dead, if I recall. So I ended up losing that one. But I didn't mind at all though. It was a really good game. I really enjoyed playing Martin, so it was it was all good. But yeah, I did lose that one 8-0. So I think what happened? I think he broke me without being broken. Killed. I think it was close to broken though. And he killed my leader, but then he had more kills than me, but didn't double or triple me. So it wasn't too bad, and yeah, it could have gone either way. I think until a certain point when it just snowballed, which I think I was always going to lose. But I think if I kept my head a bit more, it would have probably been even closer. But probably the same VPs, but I'd have felt slightly better because I'd have killed more guys. But it is what it is. So but I really enjoyed that game, and that's all good. So on to game 4. I'm 2 wins and 1 loss at this point. So last game I was against the tournament organiser. I think he owns the cafe as well where we were playing. I don't really know. But I was flagging pretty badly at this point. I was like knackered. I think 4 600-point games with a tight time frame, which fairly stressful. To make sure you're sort of not going to time and stuff. It was kind of taking its toll a bit. But we're playing Fog of War, which suits me. So what I did was I did something like really dumb at the beginning. It was unreal. Is obviously so his list was Thranduil, Palascar Captain, Legolas, and then he only had like 24 dudes, mixture of Mirkwood Elves and Palasguard. The only shooting was Legolas. So basically he was going to death ball, which is annoying because I wanted to death ball. um, so in my mind I picked the Palace Guard captain because obviously I would, but for some reason I wrote down Legolas, and so I was playing the whole game as if I was targeting the captain. But yeah, I don't know if it's one of those things where we were talking about Legolas whilst I was writing stuff down, so there's some sort of like short circuit in my brain that I wrote down Legolas instead of the other guy. But yeah, I don't know. That was just such a dumb moment, but there you go. One of those. You can probably see where this is going. Um, there's not much to say really, in that he had the terrifying aura up with his circlet of kings, I think it's called. And he tried the Nature's Wrath, but I basically dumped all of the Emperor's will and his resist because I wasn't going to need his will again. Well, apart from my game against Rob demonstrated I'm bad at courage tests with the Emperor, but other than that I wouldn't need the will, so I was like, cool, I'll chuck 4 dice at it, and if I have to might it then fine, because I don't want to deal with that. But I resisted it on a 6 and got a will back, so that was nice. Again, there's not too much to say with the fight in the middle. Basically, I sort of slowly wrapped around the sides and was sort of picking off elves. But the trouble is obviously he was shielding where he needed to shield and then get in the sixes. And I was struggling to charge a lot with the terror. When I did win, I just couldn't seem to get the dice. I think I was a bit unlucky with the dice on this time in terms of killing. But just in the middle, that's where most of the fighting was. So I'll just talk about that. I basically struck up with Rutabi twice against the captain, I think. And I think I wounded him the first time, and then the second time I had to use my final white point to secure the kill. So in my mind, I was 3-0 up. Obviously, I actually wasn't in reality because I don't know, I was just being a bit of a spoon for some reason. But yeah, the Dragon Emperor was basically thrown down with Thranduil, and this is where I sort of lost sight of the objective because the Dragon Emperor himself doesn't actually matter. So if he can target Thranduil, that's actually not really that bad. But he got reduced to like 1 wound and 0 fate, so I made the fateful decision to swap the Emperor and Rutabi around to put Rutabi into Thranduil to sort of slow him down because I was just, in my head I was just like, oh, I need him around for the bonuses and that. In reality, that was the most stupid thing I could have done. After he killed the captain, Rutabi should have just cheesed it. She was copping a few shots from Leggy, but he's like, he's probably not wounding her. And she was a bit battered, but I think she still had all her wounds and fate, just no might. And then basically Thranduil took a few turns to kill her. Basically when I realised my mistake, I was like, oh crap, I got to get her out. But then I lost the priority and I was out of might, and then obviously kind of put her in there and I couldn't really pair her off, and then he killed her, and I was just like, well, that sucks because that's a 6-point swing. In fact, I think she'd copped her wounds, so it wasn't quite 6 points, but basically he went from being in a bad position to suddenly actually things looking alright, which was really stupid. So it's basically a couple of errors in me picking the wrong person for some reason and then putting Rutabi in that combat. Those are 2 errors. Because other than that, I was just like, I wasn't really touching Thranduil. I think I took a few fate off him with a lucky combat somewhere, but whatever. And I was killing elves. The elves weren't really killing me because they were just shielding, and they did kill a few guys because of the +1. So where he didn't have to shield, obviously he only needed 5, so he seemed to be getting a few of those. So it's what it is. And Thranduil was chopping stuff up. But overall, I felt like I had control of the middle. So he had Legolas and 2 horsemen sort of running off to the side. And basically, I think I just kept charging him in to tie him up. I think he killed like one of my cataphracts. I killed one of his horses, and then there was sort of some running around. It wasn't sort of really here or there. He had three elves on their own on his left. I wasn't sure why they were there, if they were protecting one of his terrain pieces from me reaching it or trying to get to my terrain piece. I don't really know, but I surrounded them and killed two of them. I just could not kill the last one because basically I prioritised killing those, because if I kill just those three random models, which in theory should be quite easy, that's actually 3 dead out of 12 to break him. So for just to basically go in and stomp a few guys and then sort of crack on with the objectives and stuff. But I killed two and just one just would not die. And the amount of times I put 3 dice into him, but he'd shield and get the 6, or I won and I couldn't get the 6 to kill him. It was, to be honest, it did end up vexing me quite a lot. But that is what it is. Yes, in the end, I did win a combat against Legolas and dehorsed him. But he managed to get him onto the terrain piece he was trying to capture on my area, but I managed to get a bunch of guys that had finished killing 2 of the 3 elves, sort of running after him and onto the same objective piece. So I had like 3 guys on and he had 1, so he wasn't scoring from that. I basically snuck my drum round onto my actual objective from turn turn 3 or something, and just sat there the whole game. So that was my terrain piece secured. But I had to protect Rutabi, which I didn't. I had to kill Legolas, which I didn't. But I broke him without being broken, so I think that was 6. And then he killed Rutabi and protected Legolas, but didn't cap as a terrain piece or break me, so it ended up 6-6. It was I was annoyed at myself, because if I hadn't been a complete mongoloid and put the captain down as my kill, then that would be 9-6 to me. If I had taken Rutabi out after she'd killed the captain, which I should have done, because Legolas wasn't going to kill her himself, because by that point he was in combat, then it would have been 12-6. And just jumping to sort of the post tournament stuff, I guess. I ended up 8th out of 24 with 2 wins, draw, and a loss. I'm sort of not good at these things, but I was sort of looking, and I think if I had got up, 9 or 12-6, I might have been 6th, 5th or 6th maybe, which is a bit frustrating. Okay, well, it's pretty frustrating actually, because it's my own fault. But it was it is what it is. It's kind of one of those learning things, I think, and it's just kind of like when I was playing Martin, I kind of got in my own head about it, and like here I lost focus, and that's 100% why I lost, because I shouldn't have been losing that, because I think my death ball beats his death ball basically, and on paper and in practice it kind of ended up that way as well. So it was just a loss of focus. I think my social battery had just gone by that point as well, so I was just a bit sort of out of it. But yeah, that's how I ended up. So yeah, it was a really, really nice sort of opportunity to catch up with some people and play some games and stuff, and I was quite pleased to beat Rob in the second game in particular, because I know Rob won it last time. He's a very good player, so I thought once I beat him, anything's possible. Because it was a tough old game, but a very, very good game. And when I lost to Martin ended up going 3rd, so I don't think there's any shame in that. But again, I had a really lovely game, so so that was a good one. Bit disappointed not to finish with the 3 wins, but I'll target that for next time. I should have another review coming up soon, because somehow I've managed to secure 3 tournaments over a 4-week period. So I've got a local one in a non-GVHL one, but a local one in Milton Keynes coming up next weekend at 800 points, and then Mr. Gonzalez and I are teaming up in a doubles at the beginning of February. So so I'll try and do little reviews for them as well. But I hope you guys found that interesting, and I will see you next time.